Most creators make the mistake of boosting saturation equally across the board, which just makes the image brighter instead of making it richer. You might spend hours building a 12-note tree for one specific look, but the second you move to the next shot, the whole grade breaks. Your grade won't travel between different platforms because it isn't built on a solid foundation. If you look at something like Bridgerton Season 4, it looks different because of the colorists are using physics rather than just slapping on filters. Dense color in the real world isn't additive, it's actually subtractive. And that's exactly how physical film works. Over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how the PFA Color Studio 7.2 reverse engineered that perfect grade using 4 specific engines. We need to start with the contrast engine because this is where most people mess up their image right at the very beginning. Film contrast isn't flat or digital. It has a very gradual roll-off in the shadow and milky blacks that manage to hold all the details. You can achieve this look by increasing your black point slightly while rolling off the shadow contrast and lifting the mid-tone contrast just a tiny bit. The color protection slider keeps all these adjustments isolated from your saturation, so your waveform stays clean while your actual colors remain completely untouched. But here is where the process gets really interesting for your workflow. Spectral contrast doesn't actually affect the pixels themselves, but instead it works directly on the individual channels. When you push your red contrast, you're expanding the separation between red and cyan on the vector scope to create more depth. Green contrast spreads your magenta and green tones, while the blue contrast brings back those nice yellow and warms up in the frame. If you watch the scope as you increase each slider, you will see the pixels spreading across the color wheel without changing the luminance level at all. This is basically the ultimate tool that every colorist dreams of having in their toolkit. Now, once you have finished that spectral work, you might notice the image starts to feel a bit too bright or slightly inflated. This happens because traditional digital saturation is additive, meaning it pushes the pixel up in the waveform and makes the image brighter as it gets more saturated. That's just the color science. This is the classic digital problem that makes many amateur grades look cheap and thin. Subtractive density slider inside spectral contrast mimics the physics on its head. So it's like increase your saturation, the luminance actually drops in proportion. This mimics exactly how film dye stacks on physical strip of film to create a deeper look. The image gets richer instead of getting lighter. That is the big secret to why high-end shows looks expensive while your traditional standard saturation tool looks like plastic. Film split tone is what finishes your entire contrast foundation by letting you treat the shadows and highlights as two independent zones, even midtones. If you turn on the curve overlay, you can see your entire tonal range map out right in front of you. You can push the shadow split hue in one direction, like adding cyan in the blacks, and then push the highlight split hue towards something like red in the brightest area. This is what creates that signature Bridgerton depth, where you have one color in the shadows while the other in the highlight. So that wraps up the whole entire power of the film contrast engine that consists of these 3 tools. And look at the before and after. It's a dramatic change. So now let's look at the color engine. This is where the real magic happens for your image because it gets you 3 tools working in total harmony: color swap, color density, and color scheme. This is a specific system we use to replace traditional masking, which saves a massive amount of time doing the grade. Color swap is your standard additive saturation, where you turn up the global sliders and then watch the pixel climbs on the waveform in the parade. That is your basic digital look. But color density completely flips the logics to give you a more cinematic depth and feel to your colors. You get the same saturation increase and the same spread on the vector scope, but the waveform actually drops as the colors gets richer. The image becomes denser and darker, and when you see them side by side, the difference is immediate. And obviously, color density makes it look expensive and professional, but sometimes in order to create this color depth, you need some colors to be brighter, some colors to be denser to create the harmony. So that we have both tools in place. The interpolation magic happens when you turn on the mask system because you aren't just selecting the pixels like you always do with the traditional qualifiers. You are actually telling the software how to interpret the red vector of the entire frame. The mask shows you exactly where the software sees red. Then you can expand the range to include more or less of the image. You are instructing the software on how to interpret the data rather than just building a mask with very hard, ugly edges. You can adjust the hue and saturation separately or even apply different treatments to different shadows and highlights for their specific color range for both the color density and color swap. Finally, once you establish your grade, color scheme uses a specialized 3-color mapping consisting of orange, yellow, and blue to keep your subjects looking natural. When you turn on the skin tone map, the frame shows you the 3 distinct zones. Orange is perfect alignment with the skin tone line and vector scope, so you just need to adjust the range until only the skin tones are showing up, and then you set your hue target to align the flesh tone so that every 90% of your skin becomes orange. You can then use color density and color skin hue to control how rich and how bright you want the skin color to appear. The result is the skin always stays perfectly accurate on the scope, even though your environment shifts and be done by color swap and color density. This is why the mixer engine is where the real power of this system finally emerges for the colorists. Consists of 3 tools that work together as one unified system to finish the look. Film separation performs as a linear stretch on your colors, which is different from channel-based adjustment we have seen in spectral contrast. It actually stretches and elongates your entire color palette along very specific axes to create more variety in the frame. You can stretch the blue and yellow channels to expand the separation or elongate the red and cyan to bring out the hidden details. If you watch the vector scope carefully, you can see the stretching in the pixels and widens, and it recognizes themselves with every single adjustment you make. Film Mixer is the engine that handles all the normalized channel math for your grade. You are working with 9 specific channel outputs just like film, including the red, green, and blue for your shadows, midtones, and highlights respectively in the RGB. You can pick a classic teal and orange look on the normalized vectors slider and watch the vector scope reshape itself and around those specific vectors instantly. If you want to try something different, you can switch to teal and pink and the entire palette will reorganize itself to match. This works flawlessly whether you are shooting on 8-bit, 10-bit, or high-end raw footages because it relies on pure math instead of pixel selection. The skin protection stays active during this entire process, so you can push the environment in an extreme gray while the face naturally resists the tint. Film printer lights acts the final layer of the gray that works just like traditional physical printer lights in a lab. Those are global shifts used to balance your white balance or to inject a specific mood into the frame. When you enable the shadow and skin protection, the tool becomes tonally selective rather than just a blunt instrument. You can add yellow to reshape the warmth in the highlights and midtones while serving your protected skin tones completely untouched. You can even add red to shift the overall balance without flattening the contrast you work so hard to build. This is how you inject atmosphere into a shot while keeping the integrity of your work intact. When you apply this to a Bridgerton style shot, you have film separation expanding the palette, film mixer organizing into a cohesive color, teal and orange or traditional palettes that you want. Then you use the film printer lights to inject that final mood and warmth that ties everything together. It is a professional creative system that works on every single time. For the Bridgerton shot, copy and then apply to your own footage and see how everything works flawlessly, even though the lighting, the camera, the color science are different. Because this is actually based on parametric 32-bit float math instead of a LUT, baked into a specific pixels. The gray translates and adapts to the new channels and new color information seamlessly. We just spent time building a grade manually using those 3 engines. And you can see how contrast, color, and the mixer work together as a single system. But what if you could actually generate these looks based on your own specific aesthetic? Like if someone understands how you think. That is where CinePulse AI comes in, and it is definitely not just another library of presets. This is a locally learning artificial intelligence built right into the plugin that watches every single time that you adjust the slider. So when you hit the generate look button, the system builds an authentic grade by adjusting 40 plus parameters and sliders all at once. So this isn't some generic cinematic template, because this grade actually understands your creative and personal style. If you find yourself liking the color separation but hating the tonal curve, you can just click Regrade Tonal Curve to swap that section out while keeping every other sections locked. This is really a game changer for your workflow, since you aren't stuck 7 different nodes anymore. You are building one unified system that understands your color the same way the film does. And your grade isn't even logged into DaVinci Resolve. Look at how we apply this grade and just copy the preset, type in the name, and load it on Premiere Pro, After Effects seamlessly. This is a holistic cross-platform system on any system you use. And best of all, one license unlocks all software on your machine. Now you know the real secrets behind your look of Bridgerton Season 4, including how subtractive density and intelligent skin protection works. In a one unified system, download the free trial PFA Color suite and try it on your next project. Use the contrast, color engine, mixer engine, or even the CinePulse engine to enjoy how powerful it is to copy the preset from your one software to another. And that is the beauty of technology. Most creators are struggling, burning hours trying to do the same thing the hard way, building massive node trees, and wondering why their grades still don't look right on different clips and different cameras and different softwares. You can be different by just grabbing the free trial today and testing all the 4 engines by yourself to see how 32-bit float math changes the game. Your very first parametric preset is ready for you to build. So just click the link in the comments below to get started. My name is Nash, Passion Fuels Ambition. I shall see you in the next one.